Crash in the Forbidden Zone. The stars outside the cockpit were moving too fast. Jacob, a human pilot on a small recon mission, gripped the control stick with shaking hands. Warning lights blinked red all around him. His ship had taken a direct hit from an unknown energy weapon. Smoke filled the cabin. Sparks flew from broken panels. His breathing was heavy. He was falling. Fast. Come on, hold together, he shouted, trying to guide the broken ship toward a nearby planet that showed life signs. The ship broke through the planet's atmosphere with a loud roar. Fire blazed around the metal as it crashed through clouds and toward a thick jungle below. Trees, rocks, and rivers came into view. Then everything went black. Jacob opened his eyes slowly. His body ached all over. He was lying in mud, half buried under parts of his crashed ship. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. His uniform was torn. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. He pulled himself out of the wreckage, coughing. The jungle around him was massive and strange. The trees were taller than buildings, and the leaves glowed with a soft blue light. The air was thick and smelled like burnt metal and wet soil. No signal, no comms, no rescue beacon, he muttered, checking his wrist device. Everything was fried. He looked around for supplies, a med pack, some water, and a flare gun. That's all he managed to find. But then, something else caught his eye. Footprints. Huge footprints. They were deep in the mud and easily 3 times the size of his own. Clawed toes, heavy steps. Whatever made them was not human. Jacob's heart raced. Great. I've landed in a monster zone, he said. Suddenly, the ground shook. Thump, thump. It was faint at first, then louder, closer. The trees ahead began to move. Something big was coming. Jacob raised the flare gun. It was the only weapon he had. He stepped back slowly, heart pounding. From behind the trees, a massive shape appeared. It was a woman. No, not a human woman. She was an alien, giant in size, at least 20 feet tall. Her skin was smooth and light purple, her hair silver and long, flowing behind her like a cape. Her eyes were large and glowing blue. She wore strange armor made of bones and crystal. Her gaze locked onto Jacob. Her head tilted, curious. Then a strange sound came from her throat, half growl, half purr. Her lips curled up slightly. Jacob aimed the flare gun, terrified. "Stay back, I'm armed." She didn't flinch. Instead, she crouched down, lowering herself so she could see him closely. Her glowing eyes examined him like a scientist studies a small animal. Then she smiled. Jacob froze. She's going to eat me, he thought, like a snack. But instead of attacking, she reached out slowly with one giant hand. Jacob fired the flare gun in panic. The flare hit her arm, then fizzled out harmlessly. She paused, not in pain but in surprise. Then, to his shock, she gently picked him up, cupping him in her large hands like a delicate creature. "Let me go. Put me down," Jacob yelled, hicking wildly. She said something in her alien language. He didn't understand, but her tone was soft. Almost amused. Then she stood up, holding him carefully, and walked away from the wreckage, deeper into the jungle. They traveled for what felt like hours. The giantess was careful not to hurt him. She protected him from branches and even roared at a wild beast that tried to approach. Jacob was still scared, but slowly a new feeling crept in. Confusion. If she was going to eat me, he thought. Why is she carrying me like a treasure? They finally reached a hidden cave in the side of a mountain. The walls were covered in glowing crystals. Inside, she placed Jacob on a soft bed of moss and leaves. Then she sat across from him, cross-legged, watching him. Jacob looked around. No cages, no weapons, no blood. Just glowing light, quiet air, and a giant alien who seemed calm. She reached into a pouch and pulled out a strange, glowing fruit. She took a bite, then offered the rest to Jacob. He hesitated. Is this poison or seasoning? But hunger won. He took a small bite. It was sweet and safe. She watched him eat with interest. Then she did something even stranger. She pulled out a piece of stone and began drawing. A picture of him, stick arms, messy hair, wide eyes. Jacob stared at it. "You're sketching me?" Then she added another drawing, her next to him, a heart shape floating between them. Jacob swallowed hard. His mouth opened, but no words came. She wasn't just a predator, she wasn't a killer. She had something else in mind. The cage of comfort Jacob didn't wake up in pain. He woke up in confusion. His head rested on soft moss. A warm, glowing light danced on the stone walls. For a moment, he thought he was back on a space station, dreaming. But then he saw her, the Giantess, sitting silently near the cave entrance, her long silver hair glowing under crystal light. She was watching the jungle outside like a silent guardian. Jacob sat up quickly. "Where am I?" he whispered. The cave was huge, but shaped like a nest. The ground was soft. The walls were covered with glowing carvings, some of strange animals, some of him. Small stick figures with short legs and human eyes. He looked down at himself. His wounds had been cleaned, his torn uniform patched with alien cloth. "She patched me up," he muttered. He looked toward the exit. It wasn't blocked. No metal bars, no weapons. Just that giant woman sitting outside, guarding like a lioness protects her den. He stood up, but before he could take 2 steps, the giantess turned. She rose to her full height, tall, graceful, and silent. She stepped toward him and Jacob tensed. She didn't grab him. She offered him water from a crystal shell. Then, with a slow hand, pointed to her chest and said, "Yara." Jacob blinked. "Yara, is that your name?" She nodded once. Then, she pointed at him. "Jacob," he said. She smiled again. The next few hours felt like a slow puzzle game. Yara tried to talk using her language, but Jacob didn't understand most of it, so she started using drawings. She scratched symbols into the cave wall. A drawing of her, a drawing of Jacob, a drawing of 2 stars, touching, and a third one, wrapped in light. Jacob shook his head. "I don't get it. You think I'm from your dreams?" Yara placed a hand on her heart, then gently touched his chest with one finger. "Mate offering," she said slowly, with pride in her voice. Jacob stepped back. "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Mate? As in, life partner? You think I'm your—" She nodded again, completely serious. Jacob looked around in disbelief. "Okay, great, I didn't crash. I got abducted by a lonely space goddess with a crush." But despite the awkwardness, Yara never hurt him. She never forced anything. She gave him food, soft glowing fruit, roasted roots, and a strange paste that healed his cuts. When Jacob got cold, she placed warm stones near him. When he had nightmares, she sat near him like a silent wall of comfort. Each day, Jacob felt less like a prisoner and more like a guest, a protected guest. But something kept nagging at him. Why him? Why not eat him or leave him behind? Then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, as glowing bugs filled the sky, Jacob saw Yara step into a deep pool near the cave. The water shimmered blue. She walked into the center and stood still. Then she looked at him and motioned. With her hand, Jacob hesitated. "You want me to come in?" She nodded. "Bonding," she said. He walked slowly into the pool. The water was warm. It glowed brighter when he stepped in, like it was alive. Yara raised her hand and touched her forehead, then his. "Heart," she said softly. Jacob looked into her, glowing eyes. There was no hunger, no violence, just connection. "She didn't save me to feed on me," he whispered. "She saved me, to choose me." That night, after the pool ceremony, Jacob sat near the fire. Yara was asleep, curled like a giant cat near the entrance. He stared at her massive form and shook his head. "This is insane," he whispered. I'm bonding with a 20-foot alien who thinks I'm her soulmate. But deep down, he felt something warm, something safe. And somewhere far in the jungle, something else was watching. A growl echoed through the night, deep and angry. Jacob didn't hear it, but Yara did. Her eyes opened in the dark. Her hand went to her weapon. She stared. Into the trees, another giant had come. Lost in her language, Jacob had faced many strange things in space. Killer drones, plasma storms, even time loops. But nothing had prepared him for this. A giant alien woman sitting beside him, trying to teach him her love language. Yara had dragged a huge flat stone into the cave and scratched drawings into it using her sharp claw. Her latest sketch? A human stick figure holding hands with a much taller alien figure, both surrounded by stars, hearts, and a baby. Jacob stared at it. Okay, that's either a cute family or a warning. Yara looked proud. Jacob forced a nervous laugh. Yeah, I'm totally ready to co-parent a glowing space baby with someone who could bench press a spaceship. Yara didn't understand his words, but she smiled anyway, gently touching her sketch as if it meant everything. The communication between them had become a daily routine now. Yara pointed to objects and said the alien words. Jacob repeated them, usually wrong, but she was patient. Jal, she said, holding up a red fruit. Zorb? Jacob replied. She laughed, a deep musical sound that echoed in the cave walls. No. Jal, he tried again. Jal! She clapped her large hands, excited. Then she pointed at him. Jacob. He nodded. That's me. She pointed to herself. Yara? He smiled. That's you. Then she made a strange gesture, 2 hands placed over her heart, then stretched toward him. Masal Nath, she said softly. Jacob tilted his head. What's that? Is it like friend? Yara's expression became serious. She repeated it slower. Ma. Sal. Nath. Jacob repeated it unsure. Ma Sal Nath. She smiled again. But this time, her eyes looked different. Warmer, almost emotional. He didn't know the meaning, but somehow he felt it was important. Later that night, Jacob sat alone near the glowing fire rocks. He looked at the stars through the cave opening. Earth feels like a dream now, he whispered. I used to worry about late reports and fuel, rations. Now I'm learning space love songs from a 20-foot woman. His wrist device blinked weakly. Just one light left. No signal, no contact. Just him, her, and the jungle. Suddenly the ground trembled. Not like before. This was heavier, slower, and not alone. Yara was instantly alert. She stood, picking up her staff. Her glow markings pulsed in warning. Jacob stood too. What's going on? Yara growled a word. Drolgar, then, crashing. Branches snapped, trees shook. From the shadows, a large figure stepped out. Another giant. Male. Bulkier. Rougher. His armor was made of bones and his eyes glowed red. He saw Jacob and laughed. Jacob's blood turned cold. The male pointed at Jacob, growled something, and reached for him. Yara roared, louder than thunder. She stood in front of Jacob, weapon raised. The male raised his own weapon. Jacob froze. Wait, they're fighting over me? Yara struck first, her staff glowing with blue energy. The male blocked it, pushing her back. The ground shook with their battle. Jacob could only watch, helpless. The fight was brutal, fast, savage. Yara bled from her shoulder. The male's armor cracked, but she didn't back down. Then the male said something and spat near Jacob's feet, like an insult. Yara screamed a final word, Ma Salnath, and struck the male's chest with both hands. He fell back, crashing into a tree, defeated. Snarling, he limped into the jungle. Jacob ran to Yara. Her arm was bleeding badly. Let me help, he said, tearing cloth from his uniform. Yara looked down at him, surprised. She expected fear, not kindness. He wrapped her wound carefully. She whispered something soft. He looked up. What was that? Yara smiled. You are... My ma Salnath. Jacob finally asked, what does that word really mean? She placed her giant hand over his chest and said slowly, chosen. Heart. Jacob sat down, stunned. She didn't just want a pet. She didn't want a toy. She saw him as something sacred. That night, as Yara slept, Jacob sat by the fire. He whispered, she fought her own kind. For me. He didn't fully understand it yet, but deep down something had already changed inside him. The ritual pool Jacob had seen many strange places in the galaxy, but nothing prepared him for the Lake of Light. It wasn't on any map. It wasn't in any science report. It was hidden deep in the jungle, surrounded by crystal-covered trees that hummed softly in the wind. The water glowed blue, not because of the sky, but from something within. And standing at the edge of it, barefoot, glowing, and silent, was Yara. She had brought him here without saying a word. Not with force, but with a soft look that said, this is important. Jacob stepped carefully through the moss. Where are we? Yara didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the lake. The glowing water barely reached her knees, but it pulsed with light as if it knew her. She stopped at the center, turned around, and opened her arms. Jacob blinked. You want me to join you? She nodded. Jacob hesitated. His boots were muddy. His body ached. His heart raced. Still, he stepped into the lake. The water was warm, alive. As soon as his skin touched it, it sent tingles through his nerves like it was reading him. He reached her. Yara placed her giant hand on his forehead, and then gently on her own. Bonding, she whispered. Jacob had heard many alien customs before. Some were strange, some peaceful, and some violent. But this felt ancient, sacred. Yara knelt down so their eyes met. She took a deep breath and began speaking slowly in her language. Words he didn't fully understand, but her tone was calm, reverent, and full of meaning. Then she reached into a small crystal pouch tied to her waist. From it, she pulled a glowing stone shaped like a teardrop. She placed it against Jacob's chest. It glowed brighter. Salnai, she whispered. Jacob repeated it softly. Salnai. The stone sank into his skin without pain, like it melted through him. His body shivered. His heart raced, but it didn't hurt. Instead, for the first time since he crashed, he felt connected. To her. To the planet. To something bigger. After the ritual, they sat by the lake's edge, watching the stars above and the fireflies below. Yara placed her giant arm behind him like a shield, and Jacob leaned against her side, warm and quiet. He looked up at her glowing face. So, am I your bonded now? She turned her head, amused. Yes. Jacob laughed nervously. I used to think you were going to eat me. Yara grinned. Still possible, she teased in broken English. Jacob's face turned red. Wait, what? She laughed again. A sound full of joy, but their peace didn't last. That night, as the jungle slept and stars blinked above, Yara suddenly stood up. Her body stiffened. Her head turned to the east. Her glow dimmed. Jacob sat up. What is it? She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered one word. Hunters. Within minutes, the sky turned red, lit by small, fast ships flying low between the trees. Not alien. Not native. Human Yara pushed Jacob behind her and grabbed her weapon. The ship circled above, scanning, searching. Then came the loudspeaker. Unknown human life sign detected. This is Rescue Team Sigma. Show yourself. Jacob's heart skipped. Rescue. Finally. He could go home, but he didn't move. He looked at Yara, standing tall, glowing, ready to protect him again. And suddenly, he wasn't sure if home was what he wanted anymore. The other giants arrive. Jacob never thought he'd feel torn between two worlds. Above him, in the dark sky, the rescue ships circled like metal vultures. They had found him. After days of silence, someone finally came. He should have felt happy. Safe. Ready to go home. But all he did was look at Yara. She stood tall beside him at the glowing lake, her silver hair blowing in the wind, her eyes glowing faintly with sadness. She didn't speak. She didn't try to stop him. But her silence said everything. If you choose them, I will not stop you, but you will not return. Jacob clenched his fists. Why does this feel more like goodbye than rescue? He whispered. Suddenly, the ground shook, not like before, not thunder, not jungle beasts. This was different, heavier, slower, closer. Yara's body tensed. She turned toward the deeper jungle, placing herself between Jacob and the trees. Not hunters, she growled. Challengers. Before Jacob could ask, they arrived. 3 giant figures emerged from the glowing jungle, each bigger than Yara, covered in bone armor and tribal paint. Their eyes glowed red and yellow. Their muscles were like stone, their faces sharp with anger. One of them, twice her size, stepped forward and slammed a massive hammer into the ground. He shouted something in Yara's language. Loud. Demanding. Yara shouted back, fierce and proud. Jacob didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. She's not yours. She chose him. Prove it. The largest giant looked down at Jacob with disgust. A tiny human? The royal protector had bonded with this? He spit on the ground and raised his hammer. Yara didn't wait. She attacked. The jungle lit up with glowing sparks and crashing stone. Yara fought like a storm, her staff whirling, her body glowing brighter with each blow. The 3 male giants circled her, trying to wear her down. She took hit after hit, blood trickling down her side, but she never fell. Jacob stood frozen, helpless. He wanted to help, but what could he do? He was smaller than their knees. He picked up a glowing rock and threw it at one of the giants. It bounced off harmlessly. Hey, he shouted. Over here, you overgrown bonehead. One of the giants turned toward him. Bad move. Yara slammed her staff into his neck and dropped him like a tree. But it wasn't enough. Yara was tiring. Her breath was heavy. Her knees buckled. The biggest giant lifted his hammer high, ready to strike her down. Jacob didn't think. He ran forward and stood between Yara and the hammer. The jungle froze. The hammer didn't fall. Everyone stared, confused, shocked. Yara gasped. Jacob, no! The giant paused, lowering the weapon slowly. He looked at Jacob again, not as prey, but with respect. A small creature, risking everything for her. The challenge had been answered. The giant backed away, one by one. The others followed. No more words. No more fight. They disappeared into the jungle like shadows. Yara fell to her knees, not in pain, but in relief. Jacob rushed to her side. You're okay. You're okay. She looked at him with wide eyes, voice trembling. You chose me. He nodded. Of course I did. That night, Yara let her guard down for the first time. She sat close, leaned against the wall of the cave, and let Jacob rest beside her shoulder. She looked at him, not as a protector, not as a curiosity, but as an equal. And far above them, the rescue ship circled one last time, and then left. They had scanned the planet. They had seen his signal, but Jacob had never responded. He had made his choice. The human gift no one had ever given Yara a gift before. Not her tribe, not her commanders, not even her own blood. But this small human, fragile and strange, gave her something no warrior had ever offered himself. The morning sun broke through the crystal trees, scattering rainbow colors across the cave walls. Jacob was already awake, working with pieces from his broken ship. Wires, metal panels, a half-burnt battery. It was all useless. Until now. He looked over at Yara, still sleeping, her massive form curled peacefully beside the fire rocks. Her breathing was slow. Her skin glowed faintly under the sunlight. Jacob smiled. She risked everything for me, he whispered. Now, it's my turn. He pulled out his med pack. There was one thing left inside. A regen injector, designed to rapidly heal wounds for humans. It wasn't made for aliens, especially not giant ones. But Yara's body was still covered in bruises and blood from the battle. Jacob walked over quietly and gently tapped her arm. She opened one eye, groggy but alert. Easy, he said. This is a human medicine. It might sting. She didn't move. She trusted him. He injected the serum into her arm. For a second, nothing happened. Then, her body lit up from within. Not painfully, but beautifully. Her wounds began to close. Her breathing grew stronger. Her skin returned to its full glowing color. She looked down at him, eyes wide with shock. You healed me? She whispered. He nodded. It's what we do. Yara sat in silence for a long time. Then, slowly, she reached into her armor pouch and pulled out a small crystal shard. It sparkled like a star. She pressed it into Jacob's palm. For you, she said. He looked at it. What is it? Heartstone, she replied. It only glows when shared. The crystal blinked faintly, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time, they sat not as alien and human, not as giant and small, but as something new. Yara began teaching him more of her language, the real words, the deep words. Katera meant protector. Solmira meant soul light. Masal Nath meant more than love. It meant bonded by fate. Jacob listened carefully. He spoke each word slowly, his voice getting stronger each time. He was learning, not just the language but the meaning behind it. He wasn't just surviving here anymore. He was belonging. That night, they sat by the lake again. Yara looked at the stars, then at Jacob. Your sky is calling, she said. He looked up too. Somewhere out there, Earth still spun, ships still flew, people still waited, but he didn't feel pulled toward it anymore. He looked at her. My sky is here. She didn't speak. She only smiled, a deep, quiet smile that said everything. Suddenly a loud beep came from his broken wrist communicator. Jacob looked down. The screen flickered alive for the first time in days. Signal recovered, Starbase Echo. Reconnection in 45 seconds. Jacob stared at it. His ride was coming back. If he answered, a ship would land in minutes. If he stayed silent, they'd never come again. Yara noticed. Her glow dimmed slightly. She turned away, trying to look strong. She didn't want to stop him, but she didn't want to lose him either. Jacob stared at the countdown. Seconds. He looked at the glowing stone in his hand, the Heartstone. He looked at the woman beside him, the one who shielded him, healed him, chose him, and he made a choice. He smashed the wrist device on a rock. The screen went black. Yara gasped. Jacob smiled at her. I already made my connection. Her eyes shimmered. She reached for him, gently placing her massive hand around his small one. Jacob, she whispered, my gift. And for the first time, she leaned close and rested her forehead against his, a giant sign of trust. Leaving or staying? Jacob didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, not because of cold, but because his heart was too full. He sat at the cave's edge, watching the alien jungle bathed in soft moonlight. The air was quiet, peaceful, glowing, with tiny floating bugs that looked like golden dust, and beside him, sleeping like a mountain at peace, was Yara, the giantess who once terrified him, then saved him, then bonded with him. He looked at his hand. In it was the Heartstone, still, glowing gently with the rhythm of his heartbeat in hers. He whispered, I came from a world full of people, and still felt alone. He looked at her. But you saw me, even when I didn't see myself. The morning came too fast. Jacob and Yara sat by the glowing lake again. She handed him a woven belt, made from jungle vines and crystal thread. Her hands had done the work. Her heart had woven it. He smiled. "You made this for me?" She nodded. "To carry your story." Then she placed her hand on his chest. "You are no longer just Jacob," she said softly. "You are Canareth." He blinked. "What does that mean?" Human who stayed. Suddenly the sky thundered. A new ship, sleek, silver, and unfamiliar, descended from the clouds. Not from Earth, not from her people. It was neutral. A trader-class vessel, unmanned. A beacon had picked up his earlier distress signal before. He destroyed the communicator. The ship had come to check for survivors. Its doors opened slowly. The voice from the ship's speaker was robotic. "Human presence detected. Return window active for 15 minutes. Please board." Yara turned away, silent. Jacob stood there, frozen. 15 minutes to decide his future. The galaxy behind him. The bond before him. He walked to the ship door, touched it. He could feel the pull of everything familiar. Air, tools, language, safety. And yet, none of it felt like home. He turned back. Yara didn't move. She stood still, tall and proud. Jacob took a deep breath. "I never thought I'd fall in love with someone who could crush me with one hand." She raised an eyebrow, but chooses not to. A small smile touched her lips. He walked toward her. "You could have eaten me. You could have ignored me. But instead you healed me, fought for me, waited." Yara stepped forward, her voice low and trembling. "You do not belong here." Jacob stepped closer. "Maybe not, but I belong. With you." And he dropped the return beacon to the ground. It shattered. The ship waited, and then flew away. Yara placed her forehead gently against his, just like before. But this time she didn't pull away. This time she whispered, "Canareth." Mate of Yara, protector of the bond, and he whispered back, "I choose you, forever." Months passed. Jacob built a new life. A new home, not of metal, but of stone and crystal. He learned her language. He walked the jungle like a local. He wasn't a pet. He wasn't a guest. He was a legend. Aliens spoke of a tiny human who stayed behind, who won the heart of a giantess, who stood in front of hammers and walked into bonding pools without fear. And every night under the stars, Yara would sit beside him, holding his hand gently in her massive one. And she'd whisper, "You thought I'd eat you." And he'd grin, "Yeah, but not like that."